GTR. Isn't that the thing which comes to your mind when you say Nissan? Of course, the Godzilla is one of the most desirable sports cars around, but it is also the most outdated one currently, which brings me to the problem with Nissan. Well, Nissan made 3 big mistakes in India, and that is the reason for their failure. It was almost like they But before we dwell directly into the mistakes which Nissan made in India, let's quickly go through their India journey. Nissan entered India in 2005, late but still before Volkswagen, although the Jonga was being sold in India from 1969 all the way till 1999, and then it was replaced by the Mahindra MM540. The Jonga was being made by the Indian Army and was serving as a light off-road vehicle. Jonga actually stands for Jabalpur Ordnance and Gun Carriage Assembly. The first couple of models from Nissan in India were naturally CBUs, the X-Trail in 2005 and the Tiana in 2006. Fantastic cars, but very expensive because they were brought in via the CBU route. In 2008, Nissan, along with its alliance partner Renault, decided to set up a manufacturing facility in Chennai, and they took only 21 months to put that plant together, and then production started in 2010. Wow, that is fast. But the year in which Nissan decided to set up its manufacturing operations in India, which happens to be in 2008, they also made their biggest mistake, which also happens to be the very first mistake, and it is so stupid that this is going to be the funniest thing you're going to hear on the internet today. So Nissan decided that since it's going to manufacture mass market cars, it should only focus on the production of these cars and not get into sales, distribution, after sales and dealership business at all. That sounds funny. Isn't that the responsibility of a car maker? So they actually decided to outsource all of these to a third-party company called Hover Automotive. This was actually the very first and also the very last time Nissan decided to outsource its sales, service and distribution to a third party. No, they had not tried this model globally, so India was like the guinea pig for such a model. Anyways, the very first car to be made in India and then launched subsequently happened to be the Micra in 2010. A small, nice, cute-looking hatchback with a hopeless 1.2-liter 3-cylinder petrol engine producing just 75 horsepower and 104 Newton meters of torque. Thankfully, later that year, they also launched a diesel with a 1.5-liter unit that produced 64 horsepower and 160 Newton meters of torque. Mileage was rated at a fantastic 23 kilometers per liter, but ABS, which was offered on the petrol, wasn't offered on the diesel to make it more attractively priced. Now, just before the launch of the Micra, Nissan actually spent a bomb in making Ranbir Kapoor their brand ambassador, which was in 2010. The Micra actually sold in decent numbers, and so did its sedan counterpart, which was launched next year, which happens to be in 2011, the Sunny. Now don't confuse that name with anything else. So the 2 CBU models and the 2 locally made models were doing decent numbers for Nissan in India, and they were happy because at one end, the CBU models were showing that Nissan could make premium models, and on the other end, the Sunny and the Micra were actually affordable, cheap to run cars which were decently equipped as well, and obviously very frugal in diesel, guys. Now what could Nissan do to make it better? Launch a sports car perhaps, and they did exactly that in 2011 by launching the 370Z. Nissan was actually on a roll in India, and that's when things started to go downhill. You see, Nissan was doing decent numbers, and when you are successful, you start to overthink, and Nissan did exactly that. So they decided, now that our cars are selling, let's try to complicate things, and the mistake which they made wasn't a mistake, it was more of a blunder because they built on their original mistake, the very first mistake, which was Hover Automotive. Because in 2012, Nissan decided to actually strengthen its tie-up with Hover Automotive, which was already responsible for sales, service and distribution of its cars in India. So now Nissan decided that this third-party company should become the sole and exclusive distributor of Nissan cars in India. And along with that, they gave even more responsibility to Hover Automotive, like handling customer relations, marketing, dealer development, training and public relations too. Basically, Nissan was giving up complete control of most of the things which they should have been handling to a third party. But why? You see, Hover Automotive was actually an inexperienced company in automobile distribution and sales. So why did Nissan actually tie up with them? Simply because the founder of Hover Automotive was a very good friend of the then Nissan global CEO, which happens to be Mr. Carlos Ghosn, and he insisted that Hover Automotive get the contract in spite of a lot of resistance from Nissan India. Now in the very same year, which happens to be in 2012, Nissan made their second big mistake in India by launching the Evalia in India.
What is that?
Now this mistake can be solely blamed on this very guy you see on the screen right now. Being at a very senior position in Nissan's JV with Ashok Leyland in India, Andy Palmer assumed that people in India like to travel in groups in cars.
But who's being judgmental now?
And what better than to launch a ugly piece of looking man, the Evalia. which was meant to compete with the Innova.
Wait, what?
Anybody with a remote idea of cars would say that this would be dead on arrival, and it certainly was. It was overpriced and under-equipped and also gave you the kidnapping vibes. So Nissan actually wasted a lot of time, effort and resources launching this van, which Ashok Leyland also sold as the style, but only to commercial vehicle buyers. So naturally, Nissan's car was actually aimed at private car buyers who actually refused to buy this car completely. In fact, Nissan's dealers actually refused to sell the Evalia, not because it was shit, but because they were very unhappy with Hoover Automotive, which were actually eating into their margins. So Nissan actually went ahead and fixed that situation, but only temporarily. The very next year, which happens to be in 2013, Nissan made another blunder by announcing the launch of a new brand, or rather resurrecting an old brand known as Datsun for emerging markets. However, unlike how Nissan was being handled in India, Nissan decided for Datsun brand they will not involve Hoover at all because of the dealer protests against Hoover Automotive, which was actually eating into the dealer margins, thereby resulting in dealers losing money. More so after sales drop, which was because of poor marketing, which again Hoover was responsible for. Nissan was selling just 2,000 units per month, which is so low that when Maruti Suzuki sells double of that for a car, they actually discontinue it because the volumes are so chintu mintu. In 2013, Nissan unfortunately discontinued the 370Z, but they launched the Duster's doppelganger, which happens to be the rebadged Duster known as the Terrano, and because it was priced at a premium and was nothing but a Duster, it failed. Finally, in 2014, Nissan actually resolved its very first mistake by breaking ties with Hoover Automotive, and they did not see it coming.
But you can't do this to me. You know how much I sacrificed?
Hoover Automotive was actually in denial. They went ahead and questioned Nissan publicly, saying that what is the legality of this termination, and they even dragged Nissan to court, where they naturally lost, and because of which they had to wind up their operations. In the same year, which happens to be 2014, Nissan also discontinued the Tiana and X-Trail, although they launched the Datsun Go. So within 4 years of Nissan starting production in India, they had already made 3 very costly mistakes. Hoover, Evalia and Datsun, they are yet to recover from these costly mistakes. Now in the very next year, which happens to be 2015, Nissan launched the Datsun Go Plus, one of the ugliest looking cars you can come across. And in the very next year, they launched the Datsun Ready Go along with the Nissan GTR. Yes, the Godzilla was launched in India. And to celebrate this, they actually went ahead and spent a bomb in bringing in John Ibrahim as their brand ambassador. The very next year, which happens to be in 2017, Nissan finally corrected another one of its mistakes by discontinuing the Evalia. But the damage was done because they had spent so much money on the whole Evalia program that they went silent for a couple of years. And then in 2019, they launched the Kicks. Now the Kicks had a lot riding on it. It was like a make or break it model for Nissan in India, and unfortunately it did not work because of its premium pricing and wasn't really well equipped either. Again, it's not a global model, it's emerging market specific vehicle.
Embarrass yourself like that in front of all those goddamn people.
And the other issue was that there was stiff competition in the segment from the likes of the Hyundai Creta. But the only reason why Nissan is still surviving in India actually came in 2020, the Kwid's cousin, the Nissan Magnite. The Magnite started to sell in decent numbers because of its attractive design and good pricing, and that's the reason why Nissan is still able to sustain operations in India. Now in the very same year, which happens to be 2020, Nissan also discontinued 3 cars from its India lineup, which was already very small. So the Micra was gone, the Sunny was gone, not the kind of Sunny you're thinking of.
Can you
And the Terrano 2 was discontinued because these 3 cars were not selling in good numbers. So updating them to meet BS6 emission norms made no sense whatsoever. And along with this, they also discontinued diesel. So the Kick's only advantage was that its diesel engine is quite frugal and torquey. That also went away. And in 2022, Nissan also discontinued the Trio, the Datsun Go, Go Plus and Ready Go, and discontinued the Datsun brand altogether. Imagine the time, money and effort Nissan spent in establishing the Datsun brand, or rather re-establishing the Datsun brand, because Datsun was a brand which was there earlier, but technically it was establishing the Datsun brand because Datsun was never sold in the Indian market. So they had to spend a lot of money and effort to tell people that Datsun as a brand is known for frugal, cheap, fun cars. But the problem was that nobody knew Nissan brand only. So Nissan thought that, we cannot launch cheap small cars under our own premium brand Nissan, which was a very messed up strategy. Because the funny thing is, not many people know about Nissan, let alone Datsun. So rather than focusing on Nissan and promoting that brand, Nissan thought, let's complicate things further by launching another brand and then having to spend 2x the money in promoting both these brands and creating customer awareness. Another very poor habit of Nissan is showcasing products but not launching them. In 2011, Nissan actually showcased the Leaf in India. In 2015, Nissan actually showcased the Patrol in India. In 2016, Nissan actually showcased the X-Trail in India. And when I say showcase, they actually made journalists drive these cars to send out the message to customers that these cars are going to be arriving in showrooms soon enough, but none of them have arrived yet. And in 2022, they showcased 3 cars, the Juke, X-Trail again, and the Qashqai, although they haven't announced concrete plans of launching them, saying that they are considering launching these cars. Although the X-Trail is likely to make it here via the CBU route, but the other 2 cars are unlikely to be launched. And even if they are launched, they're going to be launched via the CBU route, and the pricing is going to be so high that no one's going to buy it either. So again, messed up strategy.
ये कैसे आदमी तूने पाल रखे हैं?
So why does Nissan showcase cars which they have no plans to launch? Simply because they want to calm down the dealers which are very frustrated due to poor sales. Launching a new car means that sales could go up because a new car could become a success. So Nissan always wants to create that hope with dealers as well as customers and also reassure them that Nissan is here to stay. But Nissan could quit India tomorrow and make it an export hub. It pains me to see that Nissan, an iconic car company which has made cars like the R33 and the R34 Skyline GTR, perform so poorly in the Indian market. In fact, I have visited Nissan's museum in Japan and have been quite stunned by their illustrious history. Nissan's performance arm Nismo is bigger than Mugen and TRD. In fact, Nissan's market share in Japan is bigger than every other car company. Yes, Nissan is in Japan what Maruti Suzuki is in India. Yet, Nissan failed in India because of the stupidity they did, something which no other car maker dare try. Thank you so much for watching, and since you have made it here, I'm going to tell you 2 very interesting stories with Nissan India. So basically every car maker has a fleet of cars which they give journalists to drive. Nissan at one point of time had so many Sunnies that they just could not keep a track of it. Some of them were lost, some of them were in a pile of dust, so they had no way to track those cars, and this was back in 2010-2011 when the Sunny was just launched. Actually, the Sunny was launched in 2011, so around that time, they just had so many press vehicles, they lost complete count of where the cars are. And in the early 2010s, Nissan also brought a GTR to India from Japan just for showcase. But they also decided, let's do some demo drives with it. The car did not have the adequate papers for being driven in India, and because Nissan violated the agreement and the terms of the import, the car was actually confiscated and the duty on the car was much more than the value of the car, and that's the reason Nissan decided that we don't want the car back, you can keep it with yourself, and that car is still rotting in customs somewhere, I'm told. If you want to see more such case studies, leave a comment below on what is the topic I should cover next. Bye bye.